Season 5 ends not with a bang, but with rather a lot of them. The Dominion War has finally kicked off good and proper, and we're now officially in kabooming each other mode, at least those of us who don't have a non-aggression treaty anyway, so let's see how we got here. Some shenanigans regarding a founder spy planted with the Klingons brought our ongoing unpleasantness with them to a stop, and went some way to convincing Gowron who the genuine threat is. Bringing back the real Martok, husband of Cirella, fully patched up our differences, and now we're officially pally with the Klingons again. Relations with the Cardigans did the opposite, largely due to Seagull Dukat making a deal to join the Dominion and appointing himself Azat's ruler of Cardassia. Quite how many other Cardigans knew this was happening before the Jem'Hadar ships arrived isn't entirely clear. The joining of Dominion and Cardigan was also quite bad news for the Maquis, insofar as the overwhelming majority of them have now done a dead. That includes former Starfleet officer and all-round rapscallion Michael Eddington, last seen having several guns emptied into his tits. All that now remains of the Maquis are a group in the Delta Quadrant, currently press-ganged into service by an actual murderer, and a small batch of Schrodinger's survivors, who are either in prison, released somewhere quiet, or shoved out of an airlock, depending on how you think Sisko handled it after the credits rolled. And while we're on the topic of Sisko, let's see how he and the rest of the cast have done for themselves this season. A relatively calm year for Benny Sisko this time round, as long as you don't count him time-travelling back to meet Jimmy Kirk, or the bit where he turned into a space wizard and predicted the future while his brain melted. Okay, he also had some unpleasant encounters with Eddington, the first of which may or may not have made him a mass murderer, but other than those, it's been pretty good. He even got his girlfriend back, Cassidy Yates having been released from space prison after serving her time for a bit of the old terrorism. She and Sisko picked up where they left off and are now an item again. Perhaps not a very serious item, given that we didn't hear a damn thing about her when everybody else was evacuating, but in his defense, he was rather busy at the time. Another year, another change of partner for Kira. Shakar, former resistance leader turned First Minister of Bajor, is now out of the picture. Quite literally, in fact, as we'll never see the lad again, with even the breakup itself happening off-screen. Loss is perhaps her theme this season. Two of her old resistance mates snuffed it trying to protect her, and her adoptive Cardigan dad carked it as well. She also gave birth to Kira Yoshi O'Brien, the temporary lodger she's had since an oopsie boingo during the last season, and dealt with some very difficult emotions afterwards as a result. A point to whoever thought of the name, by the way. It's not all been lost, though, as she has gained one thing, the knowledge that Odo fancies her. Granted, that's a bit more difficult to process when it comes with future Odo wiping out an entire settlement to save her, but it's a start. For a species who apparently view relationships in the abstract, Dax certainly does get involved in a lot of them. She and Worf are now officially making mattress stains, in between arguments, anywho. That didn't stop her deciding to accept a marriage proposal at the end of the season, and neither did the fact that he hadn't given one. It's no real surprise then that stories featuring Dax prominently have had a Klingon flavour to them, whether it's going to Risa with Worf and watching him do some eco-terrorism, or joining him on a Klingon ship and sort of urging him to start a mutiny. Dax's screen time has often been spent supporting the relative newcomer. Come to think of it, this might be the first season where her past lives haven't been the basis of at least one story. By contrast, past lives were the main feature of Bashir's lot this season. His selection as the basis for a new medical hologram resulted in exploring his past and the discovery of a secret that entirely redefines the character. Julian Bashir is genetically enhanced, his parents having had DNA fiddlers give him a full suite of upgrades when they decided the son they got was shit. It's perhaps one of the finest examples of a retcon that works, this new data reframing many of the things we've learned about him previously. Behaviour and intent for past actions became open to new interpretations, the result being a new layer to him. It also landed him firmly in the Deep Space Nine shit parent support group, the psychological burden of what was done to him having been carried for decades. It would have been enough to leave the story as simply trying to avoid the truth becoming known, so adding a whole discussion on the effect all this had on the formation of a child's psyche, to the point where he considers it the death of his former self, elevates the whole episode to one of my favourites. The rule of O'Brien must suffer calmed down a touch this year, though didn't entirely go away. Keiko got possessed by a Par-Wraith, the naughty boy variants of the prophets, and made his life distinctly unpleasant for the duration. I suppose there was also that whole plain simple Garak trying to murder him while off his tits on xenophobia juice, if we're being pedantic, but that's just a standard weekend compared to the sort of shit we normally throw at O'Brien. Maybe the universe realised he had enough on his plate with a new baby, and decided to give him a mulligan for this one. Odo's brief stint as a parent after an infant changeling was dropped in his lap helped heal him physically and mentally. Physically because he got his shape-shifting abilities back at the end of it, and mentally because it helped him bond with his adoptive father cum torturer, Dr. Mora. I still think Mora's a complete cock-end myself, but Odo's happier with the situation, and it's his call at the end of the day. Odo also had some developments on the relationship front. A brief love affair with a woman who didn't technically exist due to brainial wiping was doomed to failure, but the experience might have been something he pondered for the 200 years that he was trapped on a planet after time travelling. You could generously call the results mixed, as although future Odo was able to be honest with Kira about his feelings, he also pressed Ctrl-Z on a few thousand people to save her life. Probably best that they subsequently agreed to put that on hold, all things considered. After the complete and utter bastard of a year Quark had last time round, things are decidedly more upbeat at the end of Season 5. Okay, he might have got involved in some arms dealing and alienated all the people who called him a friend, but he changed his mind near the end, and the only people who died as a result were dickheads, so that makes it ethical or something. His mum shacking up with Grand Nagus Zek heralded the largest reversal of fortunes though, not directly, but because of a dodgy deal, though the end result of him having his business license reinstated is just as valid. It's enough to make up for the experience of nearly starving to death climbing a mountain with Odo, and the bragging rights he gained by saving both of their lives on that one is very much the cherry on top of a great year for him. A change of direction for Jake made him realise that his stories don't have to be fictional to be worth telling. An unexpected dip into a combat zone was very much a trial by fire for his reporting debut, and a rude awakening from the idea that we're all destined to be the heroes of our own stories. This, and his decision to stay on the station when everybody from Starfleet evacuated, is a continuation of what we saw start a couple of years back when Sisko learned from Jake's then-girlfriend that there's more to his son than he knew. Jake's finding his own way in life, understanding what matters to him, and what he's willing to risk in order to follow it. What started out as a proper pisser of a year for Worf ended pretty well, all things considered. Starting a fight to the death with the boss of your entire species isn't a great way to become popular, even if you did think they were a founder spy. Gowron might have let it go, not least of which because he was losing, but it certainly didn't improve Worf's standing, as his romantic rejection a couple of episodes later proved. This low point was also the start of his climb, though. Dax jumped his bones at the end of the same episode for one thing, and a little jaunt to the Gamma Quadrant shortly after resulted in the rescue of Martok, husband of Cirella, and Worf impressing him with his combat skills. Another trip out with Martok, husband of Cirella, ended with Worf being accepted into the House of Martok, house of husband of Cirella, and essentially a clean slate in the Klingon Empire. Capping it off with an engagement to Dax puts Worf in a far more favourable position than he could have hoped for. If Season 4 was the season of changes, then Season 5 is the season of payoffs, and a number of long-running threads bear some fruit. Sisko's status as the emissary, something ticking along for 4 years without any real implementation, was used to prevent Bajor becoming a member of the Federation. Given that this is a direct contradiction of his original mission, you could argue Starfleet were awfully understanding of the whole thing. Granted, their hands were tied, but they could still have made life difficult for him until he quit of his own accord. Elsewhere, the political changes on Cardassia are entirely overthrown, and a new, even more fascist entity than the original imposed in its place. Seagull Dukat crowns himself emperor in all but name, choosing to keep the title of Gull in an effort to paint his dictatorship as a modest one. Not that he's actually in charge, of course, the majority of his power being on loan from his new bosses. Perhaps he kept the title of Gull to remind himself that he still answers to someone else, his sense of self-preservation being greater than his desire for absolute power. You don't survive 2 changes of government without knowing when to act subservient, even if you don't believe it. While we're on the topic of overlords, the Dominion now have a foothold in the Alpha Quadrant, and a conflict we've been hinting at for years has finally kicked off. It's just the overt demonstration of a Cold War that's been bubbling along for quite some time, of course, but kabooms have a way of catching attention in a way that quietly trying to overthrow the Federation government does not. Finally, at least for those involved, we have the conclusion of the Maquis storyline. The demise of the quasi-terrorist organization was as messy and complicated as their birth, their final threat being nothing more than a veiled call for help. Somewhere along the line, we stopped using the term Federation colonies and started referring to anything in the demilitarized zone as Maquis, which I personally think is an unfortunate simplification on the part of the writers. Knowing that we still had settlers who technically fall under the Federation banner rather than overt membership of a prescribed group would have made the situation even more regrettable than it was. Regardless, all those settlers the Federation fucked over, irrespective of their stated affiliation at the end, are now departed or dead, and they take a significant amount of our respect for the Federation with them. Morals are a difficult thing to keep in times of crisis, though, and open hostilities with a quadrant-spanning union of species certainly qualifies as a crisis. Quite a few of our cast might be looking back at all this and considering them halcyon days before it's all over. And speaking of over, that's Season 5 done, which means it's time to point at all these names and either thank or blame them for the previous 3 months of nonsense. They're directly responsible for the lot of it, as they've chosen to throw actual money at this complete shower of shite, and it'd be a lot harder to make videos without things like the food and shelter they pay for. Maybe one of the people on screen right now directly funded the ham and mustard sandwich I had yesterday. We'll never know, but if it was you, a little bit less mustard next time, please. What we do know is that you can join them if you want, and for the bank-shatteringly high price of $1 a month. Honestly, I don't personally think it's worth the outlay, but then I have self-esteem issues so serious that they make me sabotage my own fundraising speeches, so make of that what you will. To the rest of you who've managed to put up with my voice for so long that you're still here, then thank you for watching and or listening. Regardless of how you engage, your choice to join us stops the blessed algorithm, may all its exceptions be non-fatal, from completely abandoning us. End of summary.